Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. My name is Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Excellent, excellent. Well, today, while most traders are waiting for the Fed's press conference next week to tell them what to do, the market's already written the script. On today's show, we're going to try and separate signals from noise and look into the charts and see what are the signals so we don't listen to the noise. With that sort of theme of, what are we hearing? The markets are speaking. What are we hearing, Barry? What are the charts telling us?
Well, let's take a look at that. That's exactly what we're going to take a look at. And what are you covering today on your segment? You're covering, I know we're going to look at copper.
Yeah, we're going to look at copper. We're going to look at soybeans, and we'll take a quick look at the monthly on crude, see what's happening with our friendly circle that's been controlling price for so long.
We're
And
going
of
to
course,
cover those.
Bitcoin and Nasdaq. Yep.
And just to remind you guys, if you guys like our work or any part of it, just click the likes and if you're subscribed, big help the channel grow. Diving right into the cash chart like we always do. And also, if you're new, it would really help if you guys catch for any segment that we cover regularly, go back at least a couple of segments back so you can catch up with the thread and what we've been talking about. In a sense, each one builds upon the other, sort of like the market. So it would help you. Anyway, so last couple of weeks, few weeks, we've been talking about this range, how we've basically been sitting around 69.09, a little bit above, a little bit below. First, we were compressing into this sort of ascending triangle. And then we were pretending or acting like we were trying to break out. And throughout this whole process, we kept saying, look, there's all kinds of resistance at 7,000 and not this chart, but the other charts that we look at from different places, just the way we sort of the lenses that we look at the market through. We kept saying, well, something isn't right. We're going to do this. We have to get on top of 7,000. Till then, this is a little bit uncertain through these trend lines. We had this trend line for the cash market and said, look, if we break this 7/8, which was an important level in the trend line, that's gonna obviously that's the break, obviously, of the triangle because now the triangle's not there. Now we're, if anything, we're back into some kind of a sideways. So it seems. Say the way I would read it is this was a false break, false move up.
Hmm.
We came back for a retest right there, which would look all textbooky, and then we tried to reverse, and then failed the next day. And after that, boom, full sort of a cleanup. So to me, that was a setup. Obviously, we can see that now looking back because whoever bought that reversal, thinking, oh, that was retest of the breakout, which was textbook, right? This is all textbook, and it was exploited, or it was just how it naturally had to happen. And the happening was to the downside, big gap, 68.20, the quarter level roughly held it, at least looking at from the April low. And now we have a counter trend, right? We had a counter trend. We had a 2 day counter trend and an inside day, which just sets up a beautiful sell if you're looking at the short side. So if your work is showing sell side, watch this inside day, right? Of course, it's not 100% trade, but it's definitely a sign you want to watch. If you have a counter trend and an inside day on top of it, it's sort of a gimme, it's an easy trade. I mean, a counter trade alone is good if we get a reversal, but inside day just sort of makes it easier. You can manage your position a little bit better. All right, so that's kind of what we have to read into this. I wouldn't say this is a place to buy. I would say this is a place you really want to look at selling if we can't settle above 69.09. I mean, we're at 69.15, but you can see both sides of both wicks of the candle are way below that, and the daily candles. But the idea here is, we were looking, you can see how it all, I don't want to repeat this, but see how it all ties together. We had the false break to the upside, then we took down, then we're coming back for a retest. This is almost like, if we have one more day up, it's almost like, coming back, kiss of death, right? Kissing the line from below before you drop.
The kiss
Uh,
goodbye.
the kiss goodbye, exactly. So the pattern is there, So this is what we do. We have to look at pattern, high probability patterns. but it doesn't mean you go blindly. Obviously, you guys know how to trade. You still you know the probabilities if that happens. So you anticipate that and you trade accordingly, waiting for your signals to waiting for your systems to give the proper signal. Now, if it's to the upside, well, sure, we can still screw around here. I mean, we could certainly get up above 69.09 and build another sideways consolidation. So if that happens, great. Let's see. If we can get above that, consolidate. If it sets up correctly, we could break through 7,000. Great. Then we'll just trade the long side. But for here, we talked about inflection points last week. And you can see how 69.09, which we've been talking about, feels like forever, but just towards the end of last year, right? First time we hit it was mentioned it was in October. And we've been revisiting that. So we're still the key till we leave the sort of the gravity of this level. And it's ending up being a very, sort of important level. We've had it for months. So that's that. Now, what else do we want to notice? Now, the kiss of death there, I drew this trend line a long time ago connecting these two, and the third point hit and bounced. And then the fourth here, we cracked the line, right? But if I move it to the last low right there, so if I go from the very low to the last low, you can see we already had the kiss of death come and tap it on Thursday, right? So there it is, Ben. It's actually
I mean,
there.
yeah, and this is keeping with the theme. What we're saying is, the market's speaking. Are we listening? Are we picking up the signal
Mm-hmm.
and sort of getting rid of the noise and pushing the noise to the side? That's a
Right.
perfect example right there.
Yeah. So if you guys, the old, it doesn't have to be old, but if you guys are watching your basic technicals, this is the setup. This is what we have. False break, came back down. Now, can we false break all over the place? Sure. We can certainly do that. But let's see. But we have to work with what we have. Now, one thing to notice for the upside, this is why I say if we settle above 69.09 and kind of start consolidating like we did, earlier part of January, earlier this year, earlier this month, you want to kind of watch that because we're looking for if it's going to happen here, this has to be a quick break, right? We can't go up there 2-3 days to sit around. Then it's another thing, and we have to add that data to the mix and do an evaluation, right? But what I wanted to say was you want to look at, we still have higher lows and higher highs. So let's not forget the trend. Yeah, it's sloppy as hell, but here's a low, higher low, and a higher low yet. And we have, of course, low, high, higher high, and yet a higher high. So the trend, the rough bull trend is intact. But before every, or let's say trend change, the previous trend is intact. It's only not intact when it's reversing. So we have to anticipate these things. So I'm just showing you guys that, yeah, that part technically, structurally, it looks okay. Yet this whole triangle bit that played out doesn't look that great. And we could have a good sell opportunity. And this sell opportunity is not something, this is the top for the century or something. It'll just be a correction. So, or some kind of a flush, I would say. I mean, what would you call what happened in November? What would you call what happened in April, March, April, right? So we could have a correction into this market. And this is a setup that we normally look for. That's all it is, really. I could have just said that and be done with it. This is the setup we look for, but I wanted to give you a little bit of logic behind it, right? Reasoning. Ben, anything you want to add to it? What do you think?
Let's watch the high and low of that inside bar early next
Yeah.
week. See what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. And you want to watch the next couple of bars. If it tries to fake you out, go up first and, then fail, which we do all the time, right? Markets do all the
Hmm.
time, and especially the S&P. And the other thing is, so this is not in the headlines. It's not part of the noise. I call this a signal. It's clean. We see the trend line. It's very clean. Tap, tap. And then you get the tap here. We have a 2-day counter trend. Everything's in place. So that's just what I wanted to show you guys. For the cash, now let's go and look at the other indices and see what the heck's happening. So here's the continuation chart for the futures market. Pretty much the same deal. These are the same lines we've had for a few sessions. But I think last week I dropped this saying, we really have to hold above that if you're going to press through here, through the 7,000 on the continuation chart is the futures. And well, we couldn't. We tried to press. We tried to hold above. Remember, we talked about how he's straddling, but really not settling above. And this is why, if you bought it here, well, then you had to live through all this. Or, why do that? Why have that kind of a drawdown, right? So this is the reason we say these are inflection points. You want to be a little bit careful. If I take this overlay out, obviously there'd be nothing there. You'll just go in with the hard number, 7,000. Oh, why? Well, there's plenty of reasons. Say there's a buildup of gamma, whatever you want to say. But we try to use these methods because it's consistent, no matter what the headlines are, no matter what the noise is. Lines are pretty stable. How stable? Well, we pulled back exact to the quarter line. You can see the cash pulled back a little bit, a few points below it, but here we pulled right to the quarter line and we bounced. And well, this is a different trend line, but interestingly enough, we did get the kiss from below right there on the same day. Different chart, different trend line. Remember the other one I drew from here, right? From the November low going up. Anyway, same basic structure. So I don't want to hammer this all over again, but just want to show you guys that.
You know, the
But
same another pattern, Barry, that's appearing is at those critical points, there's a gap it gapped over the trend line or gapped, it,
even here, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we see that like at lows, a lot of times it'll gap
Mm-hmm.
above a full square, when you're at
Right.
these decision points. So it just another thing to add to the mix.
That's true. That's true. Like here, right? We gapped here, getting through the 50% level. A good example of it. All right, let's take a look at the front month. I talked about this last week, how, we're kind of sitting right on the 50% line. Remember, these are all in different containers, right? When I switch a chart, we're not looking at the same square. I tend to look at it as if it's in its own container, right? I'm not trying to blend it all together. Although by looking at them individually, what happens is you end up seeing the general theme, general pattern through the indices and the different squares. So here, we talked about the 69, 59 level, the 50% level, saying, look, for now we're sitting on top of it, but what's the story? What's happening? And I said, look, if for anything, obviously for any upside, we have to hold above it. And I drew this little triangle a while back. So again, same pattern, right? We tried to break out, came back to kind of a retest, and then we slipped right through the 50%. This is what Ben was just talking about, right? You can see the low of the bar before the gap was right on the 50% line. Then boom, boom, and support was found at the quarter level, and we bounced. Now we're perfectly. The move was basically this is how on X we basically made the low and nailed the high. And once we had this overnight, I basically looked the dailies on support. We ought to get some kind of a counter trend, and then we were back at the 50% level, 69, 60. Now, when we go through the 30-minute chart, you guys will see this. But for now, just to get back to this chart, um, so we covered a quarter of the square, and the big question now is what? Is this going to go lower or is it going to go higher? Well, it's very easy to say 69, 69. If we settle above, obviously, we're going to watch what pattern it's going to move into next. But the highest probability from here is down, especially if the reversals work out correctly, and especially if your systems are set up for give you sell signals, right? I mean, this is why we have systems. What we're doing really is sort of backing up your system and giving your system a higher probability. Well, no, giving you a higher probability of taking the better trade, right? Like you can take a signal individual without any other help, or you can look at some extra information that might support your decision. So this is extra information to help support your decision or your system if it triggers that way. So if it's triggering sell side, well, now you have some logic behind it other than your system logic, hopefully. That makes sense, right, Ben? That's the idea. That's what we try to do with every market, really.
Yeah, you're just looking at okay, which are the higher probability signals given, the background we're giving you.
Hmm.
So you can filter your signals, put another sort of filter on it and increase the probability of success.
Yeah. Or even just to know the frame.
Hmm.
I think it's a big help. All right, let's take a quick look at the Dow futures. We drew this triangle last week and said, well, we're straddling right on the 49 is 484 level. Till we clear that one way or the other, there's really no big decision. That's what we're joking about, not knowing, what's for lunch. But that ended up becoming pretty good resistance. You can see we started getting some lower highs. And Friday, we reversed. Actually, we have a reversal in the Dow. While we did the inside bars on everything else, Dow reversed. We took out Thursday's low. So here's another one of those signal to noise things. This is a signal, not noise. This really happened. So watch this. This sometimes you get leading signals, right? So it's something to watch because the reversal's already in place. Last week
Hey,
we
hey,
also,
Barry, you
yeah,
know what?
mhm.
The Dow was leading on the way up this last leg too.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yep.
is it going to lead down? I don't know, but that's a definite signal to pay attention to.
And the other thing that was kind of leading last week, we talked about how the S&P was breaking through the triangle and coming back to retest. Nasdaq was basically coiling inside the triangle. I mean, if you drew it this way, and we've had it here for a couple of weeks like this. And I mentioned last week, I said, look, if Nasdaq's leading, we just had a break on the trend line, so watch it very carefully because this could be the downside. So that was really the sort of the pointer, right? And then after that, we had a one day up, sold off. Next day, basically inside, and then we had the break. Anyway, where did we hold? 25 140 is a key level, 135 up from the April low, and it held. So we're bouncing back up. If you guys want to know what that level, I mean, triangle line could be anywhere in here. It's just you can just eyeball it. I eyeballed it when I dropped it, so it's a 25 955. So long as we're below that, we can let's see. We're good for a counter trend. I mean, 2 days is pretty ideal. Um, we get to 3 days, yeah, that's borderline. I'm not that interested, but 4 days is too much for a counter trend. Although it can still work out, but it kind of blows the excitement because the shorter the counter trend, the faster the resulting move. That's really why. All right, so that's the Nasdaq. Let's see. So obviously, if we take out these lows, that's a big signal, right? That kind of confirms everything. Goes for other indices and basic pattern. That would give us an ABCD down, and this would be the move taking out the B. To just put it visually. All right, this is from the September October lows back in 22. Coming up on, we talked about this. We have a square coming up here. We got pretty close, and this is really getting kind of cozy with this. Zoom in a little bit, getting cozy with this, and we talked about how we could tap up when we tap the higher. I said, look, that's a resistance, so we have to wait till we settle on top of it. And this is the continuation daily, not the calendar. And then Ben was joking about, well, it'd be funny we go back up there on January 28th, right, and actually square out, which can still happen. So we're watching for that with one eye, but obviously anything lower has to, like I said earlier, it has to be done with fairly quickly. We don't want to drag this on. Okay, let's move on to the weekly charts. This is the cash weekly. You can see it's we're so close to the 7,000. Well, what does it come up to? Hold on. So the line ends up being somewhere between 7,000 7,006. It's a couple of pixels thick. So and the chart's fairly dense. But anyway, the move looks okay. We're tapped out to the upside. It's a weekly, so next week's going to be important. We have a zoomed in version also, but I want to show you this candle's a little better. So here, we had a high, kind of an outside reversal, went down. So we could have another, basis the weekly now after all that talk on the daily, in case we don't get the reversal, we start settling up above where I said, we can consolidate here on the first chart. We could do that. That would give us a 2-bar counter trend on the weekly. So that could set up, and 2-bar counter trend could certainly work out. And where was another 2-bar counter trend that I'm noticing? Well, right here. We were down. Here's one, two, reverse, and well, that was a big one. but but something like that. These things can always happen. So you want to watch these carefully. I'm just making a case for the space, but that could be adjusted for. But I think this was close enough. We saw it hit these key, hit key high level on a couple of other charts. So I think we're okay there. This chart I like. I pulled this up about a month ago, I think. And I said we're going to follow this till the end. Either we settle above the 707 level, or market's going to start, working itself within the circle. So far, it's been pretty good. It hasn't been too long. It's only been about a month. We ran up, pushed up against the 7,000 level and the circle. I told you guys, that I like the circle. It's pretty stable. We have good 3 points. Line of geometry that's acting at resistance. So that we have 3 elements in here, and they're all kind of working so far. Normally you pile up too many things and nothing works, but it seems to be okay. So this is why, but we kept talking so much about the inflection point, and got to be a little bit careful. And now you see why. Now you see how over the last month, how it all played out, and sort of logic behind that. That's important, right, Ben? I mean, without knowing how we're thinking, just talking about levels probably won't make it.
Yeah, you're showing them why the levels are important, and that's a
Oh, there you
good
go. Yeah.
confidence builder.
Yep. Yep. All right. So here's a 30-minute for last week. And what a week. Oh boy. Um, here's the gap. We came down, we broke this 69.44, which is right here. And that was, that was one of the things we talked about earlier in the early part of the month. Anyway, after that, it was level by level, right? We just broke down, came up to 69.08 here, failed, 69.08 failed here. Triangle broke to the downside, retest, 69.08, sold off. I was looking at this either the 68.42 or the 50% level to hold, which was 68.35. But we, pushed below. Sure, fine, that's not a big deal. But then it brings us to the next level, next quarter square, 68.17. We ran up, failed at the next level, came right back down to 68.17, which I drew this line here when I posted it because that looked like a false break. And this is where I saw, we had the daily support, right, on some of these charts. So then it was like, okay, false break held. We can look for some kind of a counter trend. And sure enough, we shot right up to 69.08 right there, which we all sold. and we came back down to 68.42. And Ben, I remember you getting out of your puts right here.
Yeah,
Blue, right? That was good
it
timing.
was a yo-yo. That was the yo-yo day,
Yep. And yeah, man, talk about whiplash, right?
right?
Right back up past 69.08, back to 69.44, because after we get through that, what we talk about in principle, what's after the 50%? Well, it's the next full square. All right. So that's the way we'd expect it to go. And that's where it went, 69.44. Stalled out, came back down. Well, if the market's strong enough, we'd expect it to hold above 69.08. Sure enough, it did. Pull back, it did. Next pullback held above the quarter. And after that, we were really looking to see if we can hold above this spike high. We have to really clear this and hold above it in order to move higher, because after all that, I'm thinking, well, we could get up to 69.92, which was really big time resistance. But before that, we had some resistance about 79, 69.72. But we never could really settle above, right? We just started, the 69.44 almost started acting like main reversion level, and we started going both ways. So then, after this, we were really looking, like Friday, we were basically looking for chop, but we can't clear it at 69.44. And basically kind of what we got. But the thing to notice is we did held the quarter level. We held it for 22nd, 23rd, but that's something to watch carefully, because we take that out. this whole thing looks fairly negative. That's number one. Number two, if we can clear above 69.44 and actually get some steady legs, all right, fine. Maybe we can go up and test a little higher. Anything you want to add there, Ben?
I think those levels are
Yeah.
good signposts to watch.
And you guys watch these trend lines that I put on when I post because they can definitely help you stay focused and help you frame the where the market's doing. And if you guys aren't following us on X, check us out. The links are down the description. Let's move on to bonds. Bonds are starting to act up, act properly, I should say. We went down and touched our weekly support, and then we're getting a little bounce off of it. So this is kind of a counter trend. I mean, I'm not talking about a high like this one, but it's sort of in the sense that I'm looking at this as resistance, which is 45 degrees down. You guys know where that is. And now we came down to weekly support, going back. Now we're having bonds are in a little bit of a counter trend. Let's see what happened. And this level around 1320, I think, is where the quarter level is. So we came down almost to the quarter level, and now we're getting a little bit of a counter trend. Check it out. What we want to see is a reversal there, where that will show up. In the meantime, here's the weekly bonds. You can see how the low is exactly on 114, and we've been talking about how 114 is a support for weekly, and we want to see it. For the big trend to continue, we ought to take out 114. So we're right there. This is what we've been talking about. When we hit the 144 level, if we fail, the next support was really 114, and we finally got there. Took some time, but we got there. So now what? Now we're looking to see what the daily counter trend looks like and trade accordingly. All right, let's move on to crude. Held, the pullback held structurally. We had this trend line coming down. We came and sat on top of it nicely. It's not just that. We also had structural support here. And now we're running back up towards 61. Here we penetrated a little bit. So we're starting to get some, higher lows. Let's see if the price action can push through. It's starting to look a little exciting, but it's crude. Let's wait. Let's wait for some confirmation. Let's wait to see 61 can be taken out because that we do have a little bit of an overhead for that level. Now, why are we all excited? Well, coming off the high in 22, this is 72 degrees down. We found support there, push through, dip through, and we've been waiting for this, well, for a few years. So let's see how it turns out. Looking pretty good so far, looking pretty positive. So we're waiting to clear some 61, and I want to start seeing counter trends holding above this 72, which we haven't really been able to do that other than this little one here, which was a nice trade. So let's see. Kind of waiting, watching, but it looks as more ready than we've been in a long time. All right, let's look at gold. Guys, this is why they say not to fight the trend. We talked about the 360, which was a big deal. If we're going to stall, it was going to be in here somewhere. So 46.93, long as we're above that, we said, this is going to go. Well, 50.55 is the next level up, 450 degrees up from the June low. It sure looks like it's on the way there. So that's that. And if you want to talk about support, well, 48.73 looks like a good spot for any kind of a pull. Long as we pull back, hold above that, gold's in pretty good shape. And anything you want to add here, Ben?
Talk about a signal.
Yeah, no noise here.
Oof, man, and you got to listen. You got to listen.
Well,
All is,
yeah.
I was going to say, all is not well under the surface if gold is going parabolic. Something's up, and that is a signal.
Exactly. And this is something, where we just look at charts. And I realized just the other day, like how dumb simple I feel sometimes because the charts we know, fine. But then you see something like this, gold at 5,000 and like, well, what's really happening out there? And I don't have a clue because so many things, right? It could be that, it could be this, it could be central banks. And I just felt like, wow, how, when you get focused on one thing, like reading the charts, which works well for what we do, but boy, it's not giving a whole lot of help to figure out, put two and two together on the outside, at least for
Right.
me. It's
Yeah.
what to do. That's not
I mean,
what we
I
do.
do a lot of the cycle work that we discuss, and
Hmm.
it's fitting with this big, 400-year epic type cycle activity that the system is changing, and gold is reflecting the uncertainty of what those changes are going to look like. And
Yeah.
the chart is telling us that,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's a signal.
That's definitely a signal. This is a
Hmm.
signal.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
question is, a lot of people see the signal, but they don't know what to make of it. Oh, it's this,
right.
oh, it's that. And by the time, sort of the cat's out of the bag, then it's
It'll
too
be
late.
obvious to
Yeah,
everybody,
it's too
right?
obvious, and it's too late to actually put a plan together for whatever that, outcome is.
Yeah, we'll
But
see.
anyway,
We'll
we can talk more about that as we get, I think we're getting closer and closer to that type of a change.
sure.
And this is why, we used, I remember 2020, 2022, we used to talk about gold, shooting up and having the hell of a bull market for metals, and nobody was here and listening, right? We had like 30 viewer people listening, watching our video. And but the videos are still there, you guys. If you guys are good, it's really funny to go back and check because we're like so bullish. Not because of anything we knew, because of the way the charts were looking. We're looking at the
Right.
weekly charts, and the monthly is going. Look, this is going to break out here. This is going to fly when we break.
The
And
the thing that I remember most is the crypto geniuses laughing at the people buying pet rocks, right?
mm,
Gold and silver, pet rocks. You
right,
boomers and your pet rocks. Crypto's the way. Well,
yeah. Well,
but
that was a wake up call here.
yeah, yeah. Now we see. Now we see.
Yeah, let's see what the play is. It's going to be interesting. I mean, everybody's going to have to stay on their toes and head on a swivel, like you say,
Yep.
because gold at 5,000 has to be sending so many signals.
Yeah.
And are we really are we reading this correctly? I mean,
Right.
we're reading the chart correctly. Sure, you can trade and make the money, but I'm just wondering, wow, gold at 5,000 really means a lot of things globally, right? So for all the systems in place.
Huge changes coming.
So,
Huge. Yep.
so a lot to look forward to. see, let's see what all that brings. In the meantime, we'll stick to what we know, get back to our charts, and these are just. I'm gonna have to turn my monitor vertical here pretty soon. Hey, speaking of that, I'm wondering. We're trying to do do a better presentation. I mean, I look at this after the fact and look at the video, and I'm like, well, Jesus, I get this monitor, all this real estate, and I'm looking at the chart, just like the last couple of months for some of the markets because the way it's been going. Either I can rescale, we're going to lose some of the details, or we can continue like this, or I can change the resolution. I'm not sure
Mhm.
what to do, but let us know in the comments. If this is fine, well, great. Well, this is the weekly, and weekly resistance is coming up around 55,014. And the way it's looking, let me give you the next level is 5226. The next level basis the weekly. But the way we're covering weeklies, we could be there on Monday. So 5225, it's a full square, and 5015, let's say, is the 50% of the square, and support at 4806. All right, so that's the weekly chart. Let's move on to silver. There is the full chart. I'm not even going to zoom in, but what's there to zoom in? The 107.75 is the full square up. Now, I remember saying, if we take out this 81, we're probably going to end up at 108. And there we are. Of course, we had the 90 to deal with because, it just happened to be at 90, and silver at 90 is sort of a cool, it's a very good number to work with. And you can see we broke through. We sat on top of it for a while, a few days before we shot up again. But now it really looks like the 108. Why? Well, coming out the September lows, it's 702 cycles up.
Yeah,
It's a nice,
720 would be great,
yeah, it's a
you know.
nice number. So 108 looks like we're gonna hit the target. That's 108, and as long as we can hold above 98, 97, 98, and any kind of a pullback, we should be in pretty good shape. I mean, we'll give a little bit of time to metals one of these days. probably right when the high comes in. But let's see, because I think we had to cover it because boy, that downside, it's ridiculous. So any kind of a correction, and this is we can't ignore the fact even the joy of the move is there. We can't be blinded to the fact that we're just going vertical at this point.
Well, that's what
Just
we
can't.
talked about last week. It's, you got to sell partials and know you're going to be wrong and
Right.
accept that.
And 108 is not a bad place to be wrong.
Hmm.
So, all right,
Not
let's
when you were accumulating in the 20s. No,
no.
not at all.
Be quiet, Ben. All right. Let's move on to let's see, let's go on to the weekly. All right, weekly. There is a weekly, and no sooner than I said we have to do a longer show about the squares and highs. What do we have? We have price and time meeting at 180 degrees up from the 2020 low. And this is kind of a big deal, guys.
That is a
So,
big deal.
and it was at the 101 and some change. So that is kind of a square level, right? 101 as well. Can we go a little higher? So 106.45 is the quarter level. Let's see when these things get going. The momentum is fairly strong. And we have 3/8 at 108. Let's see if we can get there. But anyway, 50% of the level is 110, 120 up above after that. Let's see what happens. But right here, we do have a square for the weekly and it looks good. So be cautious. You know, I don't even know how to advise on this because it's long and, if you're trading, this is something to watch. Probably not to go short, but, just watch for some kind of a counter trend could begin here if it squares out. Obviously, if we can settle above 102, 101, let's say 100, if we settle above 100, then, upside is still open. And, well, we could creep higher. All right, that's silver. Looking at copper, you're gonna cover copper fully. So I'll get through this fast.
Mhm.
Basically, we had a false break at the high last week. Price and time kind of came together because we have a 1/4 level in price. We do have time, 300 bars from the low in November, and we have 120 days from this low. So we do have a good silver cycle going in with the 120, and price and time came in from a couple of different places. So it's there, and I would go with the fact that we had that false break, we broke down, and of course we broke the trend line. Now we're pushing through. We can hold above 588. I think there's more to go, or at least consolidate here. Below 588 looks like we could have more downside. So 588 is the level to watch. Let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly 593 was the 50% of the level, 50% of the square. I mean, we're trying, you can see, when things are bullish, we tend to push and settle above. Here we pushed and sort of failed. And last week, the highs are right at that 580, 593. So basically, the weekly, I would say, up until we can kind of settle above that, or at least straddle mostly above that, like we do here. You can see the 2 bars here after the initial push. Mostly it was on the other side, right? So the dailies would really be looking bullish on those pullbacks. It would look good above that, but below, we'll have to see. We get into a little bit more of a consolidation like copper likes to do. And Ben, maybe when you're looking at your weekly, monthlies, and all the other charts, it'll probably make more sense. Figure
Sure.
out what's happening with copper,
Hmm. Hmm.
given the potential square in silver. All right, moving on to Bitcoin. Look at that. Everything worked out perfectly. I rarely say that. We had the low here, then 97,790 was the resistance we called out, and we tapped that, sold off, and support was 92,080, 9280, 92,080. And if we took that out, obviously that we're going to look for weaker conditions, and we took that out. You can see how clean that is, right? The day prior to that was right on 9280, and then we broke through. And then I drew a couple of Gann lines for support, and we basically really, I mean, we skidded right through for a minute, for a little bit. Now we're back up above. Last couple of days, we're trying to hold that line. And remember this descending line. I told you guys, once we break this, upside will be in good shape, especially if you can break it right there. And you can see it's almost eerie how we got really close to it here, but here we got really close to that line and it really couldn't get through. We slipped, right? So that's that. Now we're holding this line. If we drop it here, we're going to go, looks like full circle. And that lower line, the low we called out is still, but now it's really questionable. It's getting, starting to sweat a little bit, but but let's see. The circle support is around 85,000, 85,100. Now that we pulled below this level, long as we're below 92,000, now Bitcoin's on a weaker footing now. What about support? Well, if we can hold about, let's say, 87,000 for the short term, we're okay. But it's weaker below 92, and we really need to recover that. And I don't know if this is a strong enough of a support level to do that with, because we slipped through a little bit. But if the recovery can hold, then we can push back up. Otherwise, next level is down at 85,000. All right, let's move on to the dollar. Dollar, boy, this is like a bad marriage. it's been so rocky. So 99.50 was resistance. We were waiting for it. The whole thing was like, hey, this all looks great. Let's just wait for the break. We need to settle above that to really sort of ramp up the momentum. And sure enough, 3 days of trying, and we started to turn back. Inside bar here, took out the low, back down again. Now we're back to test the 97. We've tested it twice already. I would say this is not ready. We're still in consolidation, obviously, because we're being on this latter part of the lower part of the square last year, this time for about a year. I would say for a year we've
Yeah,
been here,
yeah. It's about
almost a
a
year.
year long sideways, nine,
Hmm.
10 months sideways.
So which puts in a pretty good bottom, if it's the bottom, and it looks like a bottom. So we'll just play along with that for now. It's certainly not a top because we're consolidating, right? So anyway, long as we can hold about 97 and the 50% is 96.50, there's still hope. There is an ABCD potentially working, and that would be the ultimate flush for the dollar, which could be coming. So let's see what happens there. All right, moving on to the euro. We were looking for weaker conditions before 1650, below 1650, and well, we got a couple of days of weakness, reversed, came right up to 1650, popped above, held above, and from there, it was back to test the old highs, which were 179, 180, and from here, I mean, this is also in consolidation. We're trapped in this one full square since last April. Now it's really a matter of challenging the high in September. Are we going to do that? Or are we going to just make a false break above this and roll back down? Either way, 180 is at 1941. So let's see if we can get up there and break through, or if we're going to alter somewhere in here. We are making higher lows and higher highs at this point. But looking at the bigger picture, the play was probably from 1650 on up, not up here as it gets a little dangerous here. Air is getting a little thin.
You
Yeah,
know what would
Ben?
be, classic, which is,
Hmm.
what happens in commodities and currencies. We go up, tap the 180, make the false break, and then then a massive move starts in the other direction.
Yeah, yeah. And that could be what's happening. And I hope that's what's going to happen because we're
And
ready.
and the mirror image would be the Dixie, that the dollar that you showed, the mirror image, it would be going down, making that ABCD with a false break,
Right,
and
right,
then
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's
So
right.
that we'll have to see if it plays out.
You talk about this. Yeah, this would
Yeah, yeah.
definitely flush everything and everybody be up in arms. And yeah, that would
That
be a
would be
good setup.
the
Yeah.
dollar's going to zero headlines,
Yep,
that type
yep.
of thing.
Oh my, yeah, that would be good. So anyway, that's what happened in the euro. Let's take a look at the weekly charts. So here's the dollar. Just last week, I was so impressed how our support level held, and it looks pretty good. And we're making higher lows, and let's see if we can follow through. Of course, we had 2 weeks up, a little bit of a correction that would have been fine. But now we had a full blown flush. We have new low, took out the pivot. This looks like an ABCD in the works. And that could be, given what's happening, anything is possible. With, when I was just thinking, being so bullish the dollar, gold wasn't at 5,000 at that time. But anyway, let's see. Now we're down through this 97.83, which is, it's not good, but racing down this way, it's looking like a flush. But look, if the ABCD completes, it'll be completing exactly at the 144 level, which is kind of cool. So, and you ask, what's that level? It's 96.80. So 96.80 would be the level, support level in the 144. And we could certainly get down here and flush it out. And that would give us like 3 drives into this. Not the cleanest textbook, but 3 drives nonetheless, right? We would have that in place. Now, can we take these out and get down to the ultimate cushion here, 95.50, which I had drawn out? I don't know when I drew that, but if we take out this, that's where we could go. But let's give it some time for the ABCD to work out and see what happens. Moving on to the euro, we were so impressed how the ABCD up here finished perfectly, and now it looks like we have an ABCD to the upside. So it's probably the same. Let's see the dollar and the euro working that out. Not much else to do. We were a little bit anxious, right? So the ABCD would go a little bit higher, still holding below the bigger ABCD. I really think this is a lot of song and dance. So let this finish up. Obviously, there's all kinds of resistance up here and a big cycle terminating. And we're starting to, potentially false break on this triangle. A lot of things to watch. The currency side is acting a little funny. So let's watch all of that along with the gold and everything else. There are some big opportunities coming. We just have to be a little bit patient till we get out of this sort of small moves. We get into the bigger core. All right, moving on to the Hang Seng. Not much to talk about. We're holding about 26,230. As long as we're doing that, it's in pretty good shape. But also the Hang Sengs, been looking a little sluggish, especially here. We didn't make a new high yet. So we've been having higher lows and higher highs, but for now we stopped with the higher highs. So if the low gets taken out, 26,230 gets taken out, well, Hang Seng could be in a little bit of trouble. And that's that. All right. So last week we talked about how this 298 was a balance point. And this is where balance point, meaning that's, above that is bullish, below that it's bearish. And normally it provides support. And you can see how we did it in April, we did it in February, we did it in November. And before that, it was sort of the resistance, right? So that base we built since 23 is below 298. And then we started messing around above and started pushing. Well, after this last move down to 298, obviously we turned around pretty hard and took out the last high, which squared out. So, if we take out this high that squared out and manage to settle above like 440, natural gas could be in for a run. Ben, you cover? Yeah, you are covering natural gas, right?
No, not today. No,
Not
not
today. Okay,
today.
what's there to cover, right? We're up.
Well,
So,
no, here's the thing.
yeah. Hmm.
It's, we have that false break at the high potential setup, right? There's
Right.
a little false break there.
Hmm.
If we can't get back above that area where that high came in, then we look and see, is there a short setup? I mean, the key levels, the half square on the weekly is 547, and on the monthly I got a full square at 568. So those are resistance areas that we
Okay.
we need to clear.
And I have 581 as a quarter square. So I guess
Hmm.
there's a lot setting up. But
Yeah.
I think because of given the bottom we've been dragging out, if we can hold about 440, even after, I mean that's a dollar drop, right? If we can hold
Right.
above that even after a correction, I think it's looking good. 440 is the key level to watch now, especially after we poked twice and we made a higher high. Yeah, potentially false break.
So we
Um,
we have to watch and see the setup. It's too soon right now.
exactly. Let's watch it.
Hmm.
All right, let me put it on to you. Let's cover all the good stuff.
That was a lot of good signal you provided.
Oh, a lot to cover in such a little time.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. Well, Ben, you did draw that line last week, didn't you?
Yeah,
From what I remember.
I yeah, I just put it in, but the the key thing is this 25,720. It's
Yeah,
still the
yeah.
spot. Now,
Hmm.
when Barry was talking about the S&P, we had this was last week. We had the trend line here, which we broke, and now we're coming back up. We've got a 3-day counter trend right at resistance. If we get a daily reversal, it'll be a pretty nice short setup.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure.
Because
Uh-huh.
we still don't have a higher high in place here on the Nasdaq, right? We have this
Hmm.
November high, October, November high is still holding.
Right, right.
And we've pushed multiple times trying to clear this 25,720 and just have not been able to hold it. And that's since early December we were trying. So next week we're watching. If we get a daily reversal, figure out what time frame you can get in on a short here because you got a nice risk reward, right? Here's your
Hmm.
backstop is the 25,720. So the setup's there. We got the break. Now we've had the pullback. So where do we go? Now, support was this 25,000 was
Yeah,
good
perfect,
support,
man. Hmm.
right? And you'll see it
Perfect.
on the other time frames and some other
Hmm.
charts I'll show you. So we called that out. We said, "Hey, that's good support. Here's your counter trend. So far 3-day. Look for the daily reversal."
Only thing that bothers me there is we had 45 low to low, but
Yeah, we did. We had a 45 low to low. We're setting up a potentially 90 high to high. So those counts are in there, but let price be the determining
yeah, it's
factor
always
here.
good to go with the basics. So here,
Hmm.
basics are solid. So
Yeah, let's look at the daily calendar day, and you'll see why we found support. Now, what's the key thing here? If you remember when we were talking about this, we had this 45 all the way
mm-hmm.
from the April low, right? That had been holding price.
Hmm.
We pierced it, then we gapped down out of it, came down right into remember the support we were talking about at 25,000. There's your
Yep.
support. Now we're bouncing back up to the underside of that 45. So a reversal here would be pretty important.
Yeah. Yep. Looks good.
And clearly, if we reverse, we got to watch 25. If we slice through 25, then we get much more to go. If we hold again, that would be your taking some profit or take risk off at that point. All right, let's take a look at the weekly. We talked about this, 25,932 area being really strong resistance for multiple weeks, a couple months here, and we got a weekly reversal. So now we just check to see do we reverse the weekly reversal and reverse back up? If we do, that means the low's in place and we're going to go because as you were saying, there are higher lows that are appearing. So we got to watch that and see do we get a daily reversal? Does that reversal is that able to hold above 25.9? If not, if we get a lower low, then we're going to be rolling down.
Yeah, that's a really clean chart.
Hmm. And we had good timing at the high. We talked about that low to low, high to high. Let's take a quick look at the monthly. Monthly doesn't give us much clue because you can see we've been triangulating and the triangle's forming here. What we do know is that, last 2 months have been inside. So we drop down to those other time frames and we can get much better signals from them about, what's really happening. Anything you want to add here on the NQs?
No, I think you did a good job covering it. Yeah, everything looks good in order.
Yeah, watch
Let's see what next
watch
week brings.
yeah, watch Friday's low.
Hmm.
See if it gets taken out. Watch that 25,720. All right, let's jump over to Bitcoin. There's some interesting developments here. I drew in this little ABCD, Barry, because I was like, it looks like, something ended there just by
Yep.
the reaction.
Hmm.
We didn't quite get to it, but if we'd put a Gartley on here, you'd see there was a target box. So we're in the we hit the target, failed at the half square
Right.
and made a sharp move lower. Now the key is it's got to stay above 85.
Right.
This 85 151 is key. If we get down here and get stuck below, we're going down to 73 and we're going to test this whole
Hmm.
structure over here.
Right.
Let me pull it over here so you can frame it.
Hmm.
So this 85 is your key number on a daily basis. We got to stay above it. It's clear we failed here at the 96.6. So watch 85 like a hawk this coming week.
Yeah, yeah. That's. I think I on my charts, 85 came up too. So
Yeah.
from a
Let's look at
different place, so it's going to be important.
let's look at the weekly. The weekly we talked about last week, 89 was key.
Mm,
We had a couple bars, that a couple weeks that we had stayed above it, so it looked promising, and now we're crisscrossing again. And you can see where price currently is right at that number. Clearly, if we get a weekly bar where we're stuck under here, we're heading down into this, this support zone that we drew out. So weekly basis, watch that 89,252. The daily, it's 85 and change. So, you got, this is a really important area in this band in here. Let's take a quick look at the monthly. We've got one more week of monthly for the monthly prints. And you can see they're selling it up here. They're selling above 93 right now. Last 2 months, December and January, prices pushed in and then got knocked right back down. If we close in this area, we're going to be in danger, right, of seeing of potentially printing a monthly bar stuck below 93, which if it does, again, it gives us that confluence of daily, weekly, monthly, all targeting
yeah,
this
yeah. It's
mid
true.
70s.
And good
So,
support. Yeah,
yep,
really good support.
good
Mm.
chance we head there. Anything else you want to add here on the on Bitcoin?
No, we're good. We're better than good. Great.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the commodities. Last week we told you cocoa was on the watch, right, for potentially long. Well, they took out the low and just ran it down to the next level. So that's why, I just give you the heads up early, but you need the setup. You need the proper technical setup to play. If you played, you did have a tight stop, but cocoa got stopped out and pushed lower. So we won't be talking about cocoa until we get another good setup there. What we are going to talk about today, the first one we're going to talk about, soybeans.
Still in play. Still in play.
Yeah, what did we see in beans? So we had this low and we said, okay, it's looking good. We rallied right back up into resistance, sharp pullback right into support that held, all above this full square of 1035, right? And then the end of last week, we pushed right up on this little channel that we drew in, from the sort of the lows over here and the gap we had. So we're testing the top of the channel. The reason I'm showing it to you guys, lows held, 1035 held, and now we're pushing to the top. We break through, we should have a nice run because what do we see here? We see a low, low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low.
Higher
This is
high.
yeah, and with higher highs, right?
Yeah.
With higher highs going, but there's accumulation going on here. It's it's kind of dull and slow and boring, but it's there. That's the signal. The signal is somebody keeps buying and they're stepping up at a higher price. So when this thing breaks, we can catch that fast third move, something like this, except longer and probably steeper in price. So that's the possibilities here. Right now, we're watching on the downside, we're watching the 1035. On the upside, right around this, 1065, 1070 area. And you'll see the numbers on the weekly as well. Here's your weekly. Key number here on the weekly is the 1060. We closed over it, but you can see we've been crisscrossing it for a month now. This coming week, if we can get a full bar above it, it could be the launch. Because right, look at all this over here that it was battling for, the last year and a half at the top of this
Yeah.
channel.
Hmm.
So we came down, test, test, test. Now it looks like we're going to reverse and see if we can't break out here. And if we do, again, we're going to be catching a fast move, right? Because you could say, here's your one, here's a two, here's the next leg, and the next leg could be the fast one.
Yep.
And above, obviously, we have the full square at 1283, which a move from here would be a really nice move in beans. Lastly, let's take a look at the monthly, see what the monthly's showing. Again, these formulations, these formations that you see right here that we're currently in, very similar to this. It does these, right?
Yep.
And then you get a big move out of these long consolidations. So this is what we're trying to catch. Monthly's obviously a little less developed than the others, but watch your daily, watch this the top of this channel, which say 171, 172. We clear that off to the races. Anything you want to add here on beans?
No, we're good. We're good.
All right, let's go to, you covered it somewhat, but let's go to, and that's copper. So what are we looking at in copper? Copper, we had, as you were describing, we did a false break at the high here. From this low, we did 240 up in price by 120 in time. So we have a nice square there. We failed at the full square of 6, found support at the half square. See how this is resonating kind of nicely? Now I'm watching to see, do we get, what are the counter trends looking like? We have one bar counter trend so far up. Next week, do we roll over? Do we get stuck under 6.5? Can we sit on top? If we get stuck under 6.5, it's a decent short setup, for at least a move probably down to this 534 area support. There's 3 drives here too, Barry. 1, 2, 3. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but they're there.
True,
So
true. Yeah.
this could set up, depending on the price action next week. Again, it's just like when we were talking about cocoa. The price action has to support the thesis. Cocoa, it didn't, because it blew through support. Here, if we blow through resistance, right, it's going again, and we're going higher. But if we get stuck under 6.5 and we reverse, there could be a nice short here. Last time we had this setup was here, right? We made a high, pulled back, did a false break high, came down, went back up, made a lower high, and then we got that. Not saying that's going to happen again, but that's the setup potential here. All right, let's quickly take a look at the weekly. You can see where we ended up on the 270. This is off of the 2016 low. And what are we looking at here? Well, we had a weekly reversal. We closed near the high. Now we want to see, what does next week's bar show? Again, do we get stuck under this full square? Do we make a lower high? If we do, it'll support the potential short thesis here. And it's not looking for copper to go back to 3 or anything, but 5.5, big move.
Yeah. Very big move.
Here's a picture of the monthly. You can see where we closed Friday. Look right near the high that we made before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Never make it easy, do they?
No, always.
So monthly obviously is still super bullish. We've just made a higher high, but it's the daily that's the play here. This is what we're watching. So this coming week, let's watch and see if we get a day, when and if we get a daily reversal, and if price cannot get above 605, it will support a tactical short here in an otherwise bullish trend. That's copper. Lastly, I just want to really quickly show you one of our old friend charts. This is the monthly crude oil, where the circle was controlling the price and sort of capturing it along with the square. Look at what we've got now, Barry. We've got a full bar outside here, and we made a higher high this month. Remember, when you escape the circle,
Yep.
often you get a powerful move in the opposite direction of the move that was going into that. So here we were coming down, the potential move is higher. Here's an example. Here we were following the edge of the circle up. We got outside of the circle, and then we did that move where we went to negative crude. Something to watch, something to add into your other work and an analysis on crude, but the bullish case is going to be supported on a monthly basis because we have a monthly reversal and we're now outside of the circle. So that's all I've got on commodities. As I said, gave you the update on the cocoa. We're watching the other grains, watching the softs to see if these sideways consolidations can turn into a proper setup that we can jump on. Other than that, that's it. I think the signals are there. You got to really focus in and find the clues that the great clues that Barry was showing you on the S&P and the indices and some of the commodities. There are big moves coming. A gold and silver's price action is telling us that there are massive changes coming, and the markets will reflect that. And so, as traders, that means volatility, and volatility is our friend. So, good job, Barry. Everybody rest up, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ben. Good job. And we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys soon. In about a week. It should be an exciting week.
Absolutely, because we got
Mhm.
FOMC too, which always
Yeah,
throws additional gas on the fire. So
a lot going on.
we'll see everybody next week. Take
All
care.
right. Bye bye.
Bye.